And it's on and popping, baby. Let's get it. What it do? Man, that's loud as hell. I don't get why it has to be on speakerphone. Like talking to it like a normal person, whatever. Wasn't supposed to show that. Don't know why I immediately started clicking on slides I shouldn't be showing. What up? You guys guessed it. We're already behind schedule. We're already super late. But it's all good, baby. It's all good. We're about to see something amazing. We're about to see a really, really well done show. You guys going to get way too personal. I have this thing where like I'm obsessed with the cleanliness of my ears because I'm constantly wearing headphones. Or at one point, I was wearing headphones. I used to rock headphones, like broadcasting headphones, which try to seal in all sound, so the only thing that you hear is your voice in your ear. And I spent a lot of time with those on back when I was a mere high school sports broadcaster. And I used to be like obsessed with how dirty my ears were if I thought they were dirty or something like that. And it is still carrying over to this point in my life. But yeah. Also, hydration breaks. We do have 2 of those today. For those of you who watch the show, okay. For those of you who watch the show on a regular basis, I actually made some minor changes to like the camera angles and stuff. See how that works. Speaking of camera angles, I need to fix one right now. There we go. But yeah, I made some minor changes. Oh, we already skipped a frame. How is that possible? We literally have a setting that doesn't allow for the stream to go above a certain amount of bitrate to prevent such things from happening, which is mildly annoying, but whatever. Don't worry, guys. We're not talking about hirings and firings because I find that to be stupid. Some things you got to do on your own if you want to be a great. I'm not about the interview path. I'm about, unless it's like weird shit or something like that, I'm about finding. What was I gonna say? I'm not about like talking about the interviewing process, even though it is important to monitor at times. Man, we got a good chunk of views. Well, a good chunk relative to my situation, but yeah, guys. Anyway, shout out to the people who consistently listen to the show. Appreciate that. Love you guys. Especially since I don't do a very good job of social media stuff about the show, which, once again, big goal. We're already killing one of our goals so far this season. There is another episode of the exit interviews that's supposed to drop whenever I upload it, which will probably be after this show is over with, and hopefully people will watch it. It's with my guy Joe George, who helped me a bunch when I was in radio, and I'm assuming covered for me a lot when I fucked up when I was a radio broadcaster. Let's see. No post stream followers today, which is fine with me. I'm just glad. I'm just glad we're getting to the point where we're actually getting followers again, because I was starting to think that I sucked at this or something. Oh, so funny, because you guys know that I would never allow such negative thoughts to even enter the concept of my brain, that I wasn't good enough to do this. Because quite frankly, it cost me nothing but time to do this show. So I could literally do it until the day that I die, until I become rich and famous. Which is going to be the plan, to try and do this as long as possible, as long as time will permit. Which, of course, as you get older, that time will permit thing is more and more difficult to justify to people like significant others and friends and all kinds of jazz. Luckily, I have sportsy type friends, so I actually talk about a lot of these things in our group. Like my friend Snowman made a really funny joke. He was just like, do you think that he asked me, did I think Aaron Rodgers is going to take it easy on the Packers because that's his team for next year and he doesn't want his teammates to think so negatively of him off the bat? Or will he go out there and annihilate them so that they can understand that they need him and they'll come and, sweeten the price a little bit? Which is actually a brilliant idea if it ever is executed. I love it. I really do. Hold on. And as a matter of fact, guys, don't worry. We don't have to wait too long because I did some pre-work in terms of our tweets. So we're gonna do that. So did I put Twitch? Did not put YouTube on here. YouTube. Broadcast yourself, fool. I'm kidding. Why is YouTube downtrending? I feel like people will try and do that hashtag even when it's not actually happening, just to fuck with people. You trying to tell me that's never happened? I 100% know that it's happened. Twitch streamer, already got that one. I wouldn't call myself that, mainly because nobody watches my stream, so it's kind of hard to be like, obviously I'm a streamer, bro. But I am here. I show up to work every day, even if I don't get paid. We're trying to work on doing the work outside of the show so that we can eventually turn this into a paid thing. Oh, by the way, still taking suggestions for the pricing for still taking suggestions for advertising pricing. If you are a podcaster yourself and you know of such things, please tell me. Anyway, no. If you have any ideas how much I should use as a price point for advertisers and stuff like that. Sorry, I was reading a tweet, which is why I paused like that. What? Yeah, that's correct. Sorry. Yeah. Anyway, that was just something to pay attention to. If you have any suggestions for what I should be utilizing as a if you have any suggestions for what price point I should be utilizing to get people to give me money as an advertiser, let me know. I got somebody who wants to advertise on my show, but I have no idea what to tell them my price is because, quite frankly, I haven't established my own value. How can I? I'm sorry. Let me go Instagram influencer on you. Like, how would I ever establish my own value if I'm not willing to, go out there and put myself out there? You tell them how much you're worth, King. Which, by the way, I am very quickly getting annoyed with people who are not black calling me King. Actually, I'm annoyed with people who call me King in general. It has happened multiple times, and as a matter of fact, there's a group of people that I know in real life who I know mean it in the nicest and kindest way possible, and as an actual sign of respect, who call me King, and I find it annoying as fuck. So, yeah. Yeah. Hold on, let me cause some drama. Oop, sorry. Anyway. Yeah, ignore that stupid Twitter thing that I was doing. Please. It'll help me out a lot if you weren't paying attention to it. Anyway, need to set up a Facebook page for this podcast so that I can go on Facebook Live as well at some point. Plug exit interviews. Shout out Oh, man. Yeah, we got to power through this, guys. We're already super behind schedule. Supposed to be at my girlfriend's house at 8 o'clock, and it is 7:16, which is not going to happen. I did tell her I was going to be late this time, so now legally she can't get mad at me. That's how it works, right? Yeah, let's do it. What is going on here? What's going on, Buckaroo? Why are we skipping so many frames? What's going on? What are we doing? Yeah, you want to tell me? Because we have settings for specifically for this situation. And it's happening every 2 minutes. I'm not happy about that. It just happened again. Great. Hold on. These are minor issues is what. Let's see. Well, probably going to have to... Do I disconnect my own phone from the Wi-Fi? Because it is incapable of actually streaming, which means I need to open up something else. All right, cool. Twitch needs to fix that feature that when you close it, it closes the stream. Like the chat for the stream. It's very weird. But yeah, we just freed up some space, or shouldn't even be a problem. I don't even know why that's happening. Anyway, we need to get busy out here, ladies and gents. We need to get it moving and shaking a little bit. All right, let's do that. If you got anything, if you're watching in the chat or if you're watching the show, you know the deal. Put whatever you want in the chat. We literally will talk about anything. Let's go. All right, sound check there. I need to get a mouse pad at some point. I'm sure that noise is annoying the fuck out of people at some point. We got everything. We got as close to everything that we can possibly get. So it's time to kick ass. It's time to make this magic happen. In 3, 2, 1. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, and everybody else in between, I'm Ashton Gene Lewis. This here podcast is affectionately known as the Broke Boy Sports Podcast. Currently, we are broke boys because we do not have a full-time job. We're trying to turn this into a full-time job. Obviously, if you're not in on the evil master plan, it is to make this podcast so popular that we sign a $100 million contract with whatever streaming platform wants to pay us that money, and then immediately stop doing this show. That's the evil plan, or the alternate version of the evil plan. I don't think I've shared this with a lot of people. We keep doing this until we get to go to all the fun sporting events we want to go to forever. You know, without question. We're trying to do as little work as possible, and it looks like Meatloaf just died. Shout out to a real king out there. Shout out to a legend of the game, no doubt about that. So we're starting off the show like that. Don't forget, I'm Ashton Gene Lewis. You can find me on Twitter. You can find me on the internet in a lot of different places. These are the places that I'll allow you to find me. On Twitter at FB_playbook. That's like my primary sports account or whatever. It used to be my high school sports account where I used to tweet a bunch of high school sports type stuff or whatever. And honestly, to be fair, be for real, we've slowly been transitioning the audience away from like random high school kids, because I used to follow guys who were athletes on different teams and stuff like that. And we're getting closer and closer to actual sports fans of like professional sports, people who want to look at things that I type that are not invested in whether or not I typed their name in the tweets, because there was a lot of people who followed me for the simple fact that I used to tweet out the names of athletes when they would do cool things or whatever on the field. I still do that, but in a different way. Anyway, that's where you can find me on Twitter. My personal Twitter account, where I just tweet about like my life and stuff like that, at the Ashton J. I will say it has not been as active lately because I've been busy with like real life stuff, and also been busy watching a lot of anime. Not even gonna lie, guys. I just started Kevin Smith's He-Man Masters of the Universe, and it is the He-Man that a lot of people tried to say was messed up and it sucked and all this kind of stuff like that. And then I realized really one episode in, why people said that, and it was 100% because incels run geek Twitter. So you take that as you will. You definitely should check it out. Very, very good animation. I like the story that's being told, and I'm not even halfway done with it yet. Actually, I'm on episode 5, I think, of 7 or something like that. But yeah, it is fantastic, and I can't wait to see what they do next season. It's gonna be off the chain. I don't know why I just said off the chain. Follow the podcast at BrokeBoyPod on Twitter. That is the hashtag. I'm sorry, that's the handle for the podcast's Twitter account. That's where you tweet out the show and all the interviews that we do on YouTube and on Twitch, where we're simulcasting right now. Don't forget, if you're watching on YouTube, like, subscribe, smash that bell button, or smash that notification bell so you know every time that we go live. Yeah. Anyway, hit the like button. It helps people find me more. If people like you, I think that's how that goes on the internet. Like, the more people that hit like, the more people like you, and then they show you to more people, which is weird. But yeah, we're trying to break through the loud world that is sports podcasting, and we'll see how that goes when it's all said and done. Instagram, hit me up on Instagram at @TheAshtonForever. That's my same name on TikTok. If you would follow me on TikTok as well, I make sports TikTok, so if you like that kind of stuff like that, like most recently, I think I did the top 5 on and off field fits, like outfits that I liked. They were pretty dope. And I think and then I've also started this series of like NFL vets that I want to see win the Super Bowl because of like their life story and stuff like that. We'll see. Other than that, that's all I got. Make sure you follow me on Twitch and on YouTube. Broke Boy Sports is the name on Twitch. Shout out to anybody who's hopped into the chat or watching the show for the first time. Don't forget, you can literally write anything into the chat, and I will stop this show in its tracks and react to what you just said. Other than that, let's get it started. We got to go to our first. Oh, by the way, adult stuff. I got hit with jury duty for the first time in I want to say 7-8 years or something like that. So I finally got hit. I'm wondering when we got to a point where people did jury duty again. I didn't know that was a thing. So I thought COVID kind of stopped that all from happening. But whatever, I guess a jury of your peers. Hopefully the person... Well, you know what? We're going to show up for jury duty. Probably be like the first time I ever do it too. Like, no lie. Nerd news. Let's get into it. This one's actually a really cool story. Super pumped that I was able to find this one. Shout out to esportsinsider.com. I think this is where I got this from. But they wrote a story about this organization called the British Esports Association. Go figure. They're trying to keep it simple so everybody can find them. It's called the BEA, not the BESA. It is called the BEA. And they have officially put in money in the city of Sunderland for a multi-million-dollar facility that is going to host an academy, essentially, for esports athletes. It is supposed to, and it's actually right next to Sunderland, the EPL team stadium, the Stadium of Lights. The plan is a state-of-the-art grounds for esports training, I guess, in multiple facets in terms of like working out or whatever. But also, it's going to have like streaming docs and everything like that. They're going to have tournaments, obviously, locally to get the community involved with it and everything like that. They're going to have summer camps for, I'm assuming, kids to learn and develop their skills and hone their skills and stuff like that. Considering that the UK apparently is the number 6 market in the world for esports and number 2 in Europe, this is not surprising. It is just really cool to live in a time where like being a esports athlete is a real thing that people respect and put a lot of money behind. So, and honestly, if you're a kid who's trying to convince your parents of some sport that they can invest in or whatever, buying you like a high-end PC and all the stuff for streaming to be like, I want to do that instead of like playing professional sports could turn into something for you. Also, it could turn into something for you, and it's just like it's very strange in the sense that it can have the same or similar track of an athlete, except like you get to control whether or not you go pro. Like your quality of product controls whether or not you go pro, not somebody else making a decision. Like in terms of like a general manager for a sports team or something like that makes a decision on whether or not you're good enough to play on the team. You decide whether or not you're good enough, and that would be interesting when it's all said and done, because it seems like you have way more control as an esports athlete than you do like a typical traditional sports athlete, which is kind of a cool concept when it's all said and done. But yeah, that's what I got for nerd news, man. The BEA basically opened a esports training facility. It would be like Exos, which if you're familiar with stuff that goes on in the NFL draft or just athletes in general, Exos is a series of gyms all over the country where they have like premier next level training for athletes from a multitude of sports. But that is the one that we got going on here. Nerd news. BEA has got their own, I'm assuming they're one of many that's on the way for major development. I'm assuming they're trying to break into the London market as soon as possible. So, yeah, that's pretty cool. We move on to one of two segments that define this show. This show is billed as the best and the worst that sports has to offer every single week. As a matter of fact, that actually reminded me of something that's really important. Make sure you go check out the YouTube channel. I've been doing these things called exit interviews where I talk to either media members or players associated or affiliated with teams in the NFL, and I talk about what their regular season actually turned out in comparison to the expectations they had before it, and then the also what they plan to do in the postseason. So far, I talked to Karen Garegian about the New England Patriots. I talked to my guy Joe George about the Joe Georgia Sports Talk 790 of Overtime, the show. Check it out. And then on top of that, I've talked to I talked to him about the Bears and the Texans. So we got 3 of 32 that we got to get done there. And I'm working on getting the Washington football team next. And of course, my precious Seattle Seahawks, who I have a lot of questions about for this upcoming season, of course. And I try and do it from an educated perspective in terms of like, I pay attention to sports on a regular basis, and I think I have better questions than like the average fan does. Only time will tell, but so far we're 3 of 32 on the way into this one, and of course the objective is to get players involved with this, which would be dope to be able to get a player's perspective on how the season went and what they did this season that they felt like was improvement for them personally and the team-wise overall, and also what their plans for the offseason will be, because I don't know, man. It's tough being a pro athlete because you got to do a blend of I'm always working, but also like I get to have fun at the same time. Like you gotta be like a person that puts in 2-a-days, but also hits the club the same night. And you can only do that for so long. Like I think a lot of older athletes will tell you that as well. A lot of guys who have made it to their 30s or past their 30s or past 30 years old in whatever league it is will tell you that, hey man, you can only burn the candle at both ends for so long. But yeah, that's we move on to best of the best thing that I saw in sports this week. So Bill Lambert. Some of you are familiar with him because he is one of the iconic members of the Detroit Pistons Bad Boys, as you should. He is a huge part of really a key moment, a key point in time for the NBA as a whole, formative years for the NBA as a whole, when they were at a time period where it seemed like they needed somebody to step up and try and beat Michael Jordan as his powers were on the rise. And of course, the Chicago Bulls were reaching legendary status, and the Detroit Pistons were one of the few teams that was able to do it, and they didn't have to have like multiple legendary players to be able to pull it off. Bill Lambert, of course, was a huge integral part of why the Detroit Pistons were so valuable and so important. And on top of that, they brought a different type of mentality to basketball than most people don't associate with it in terms of like how hard they played. And of course, the Jordan rules being the mysterious alleged Jordan rules. But most people, I guess, don't know this about Bill Lambert, so I'll recap it. Bill Lambert went on to become a coach in the WNBA. He actually was the coach of the Las Vegas Aces for a couple of years and was part of Asia Wilson's emergence. Well, she was already a superstar, but she credits Bill Lambert with helping her become a better basketball player because they played the same position in basketball overall. And also on top of that, it seemed like Bill really resonated and connected with a lot of people who were on the Aces, who are the Las Vegas Aces, if you don't know, are a powerhouse team in the WNBA. They were in the Final Four before the WNBA Finals, and they got beat by the Phoenix Mercury, who would go on to become the WNBA champions of the reigning season, right? But Bill was a big part of that. And one thing that just recently happened, one of his assistants has been hired as the new head coach of the reigning WNBA champs, the Phoenix Mercury. And that makes it now 4 of his former assistants are now WNBA coaches. Somebody else tweeted out that 6 of the 12 head coaching spots in the WNBA as a whole are held by WNBA players, which is really dope overall because one, you'll notice this as time goes on, like the gap between WNBA players is not as large in terms of like coaching roles and stuff like that as you would see in the NBA and a lot of other sports as well. And it also feeds into the idea that I think a lot of people get behind, especially a lot of women, that women should be teaching women how to be women or helping women along the path of life and having those kind of connections that boys have just like by default always had in every single sport they've ever competed in. So I think that that's pretty cool that Bill Lambert, after all these years, whether it be because of his decision making or somebody else's, has now helped sprout multiple head coaching careers and put women who clearly are qualified to excel at the coaching position, which is one of the most difficult jobs in all of sports, to help them excel and reach the pinnacle of their sport that they play. And once again, and as time goes on, I guess we can, if you don't know this, like there are, by a lot of people's estimation, too many men that are involved in women's basketball, and especially in comparison to the number of women that are involved in men's basketball. It's not like anywhere near balanced in any way, shape, or form. Case in point, Becky Hammon is like the first woman in my entire lifetime, so like almost 30 years, that I've heard as a legitimate head coaching candidate for some people. And she's now moved over to the WNBA to coach the Las Vegas Aces, the powerhouse team that I was just talking about, where Bill Lambert was their head coach and helped lead them to the WNBA finals a couple years ago when they were in the bubble. But nonetheless, it has been interesting to see that development, because it's wild to say, there are too many men in women's basketball, but you see one guy who was at the helm for the Aces who helped already successful people become even more successful. So like a man stepping out of the way to open, or the man stepping out of the way allowing women to step forward and shine like they should in their sport. I thought that was pretty cool for best of the best, especially considering when it comes to the coaching game, you see it happen at almost every single level, the recycling of the same names over and over and over again in the good old boy system. And whether it be that, or whether it be just the fact that the coaches have deep connections with each other, is not even about like a whole race thing when it's all said and done. Sometimes it's literally about the fact that like I can't verbally say that this guy sucks at his job, so I'm gonna give him a job, right? That guy's my friend. Me and that guy came up in the same way. He's my friend from like another job that I had. So obviously he's got a leg up over a person who is just as qualified or more qualified than someone else. So yeah, that's what I got for best of the best. And on that note, ladies and gentlemen, it is time for our first hydration break of the show. If you are not familiar with how this works, we take time in the show to step back, relax, chill out a little bit, and get ourselves ready for the next segment, mainly because the next segment is called Worst of the Worst, and it is the worst thing that I saw in sports this week, so you gotta kind of like get yourself ready for it. Some people choose to engage in some adult beverages like this Hendrick's gin that I got in my hand right now. That is not an ad. Other people, like me today, will be engaging in some drinking of water to hydrate myself, but we all take the same length of a hydration break, so we're all on the same level. Water and alcohol are equal in terms of hydration on the hydration break for the Broke Boy Sports Podcast. So we will take a second. Let's see. I'll pick a song that we don't hear all that often. Let's go Fighting These Battles by Christina Gukas, who, by the way, all music on the show done by Christina Gukas, a friend of mine, and shout out to her for making it happen every single week. Talk to you guys in about 3 minutes and 52 seconds. And we're back from our first of 2 hydration breaks here on the Broke Board Sports Podcast. Let's get right back into it, ladies and gentlemen. We just did Best of the Best about Bill Lambier's legacy as a WNBA head coach that spawned 4 more WNBA head coaches, and has also put the league in a position where half of the coaching spots are held by former WNBA players, which is pretty dope in terms of, I believe, would the NBA want that to be a thing? Would the NBA want half of their spots to be held by former players? I feel like maybe it would draw and connect fans a little bit more with the team and the organization overall in some way, shape, or form. But maybe it would also, I think teams just want whoever's going to help them win overall. But it is kind of wild. I mean, even though there's only 12 teams in the WNBA right now, hashtag expand the league. There's only 12 teams in the WNBA right now. So it makes you, wonder, like, how are they going to shake out, right? Because success in the WNBA is so much more difficult to obtain because there are so few teams that a lot of the WNBA teams are like just stacked with talent. So the margins between winning and losing are massive because the margins between winning and losing are so small because you don't have like 4 superstars. Instead, you have 3 on your team. So that happens pretty consistently. So we move on. Let's talk about the worst thing that I saw in sports this week. Let's see if I actually put it together. Did I? I did. So, worst of the worst this week, ladies and gentlemen. It seems like the Summer Olympics were just a couple of months ago, because they were. And in 2 weeks, the Winter Olympics are going to begin. And I, for one, the Winter Olympics start in Beijing, and they'll be going from February 4th to February 20th. The thing to point out is definitely the fact that the sports tsunami is about to be back, ladies and gentlemen. I don't want to be that guy, but it's like for real about to go down. So we'll talk about this later on because we have another story that connects to it. But the Olympics will be going on it'll be going on from February 4th to February 20th, which will be during the Super Bowl, one of those days. So football will be going on, and then it'll end, and there'll be another week of the Olympics left, basically. We have Major League Baseball, which was planning to come back for spring training during February, which is not the spring, but we'll talk about why that may or may not be happening here pretty soon. Combine that with the fact that the NBA is going on, and the playoffs are just around the corner. They're kind of close, but they're kind of not. Like we're a little beyond the halfway point. The All-Star game is coming up, so that's major, and we are coming up on. So hockey's going on as well. Major League Baseball is about to be back. NBA's going on. NFL's going on. Of course, EPL and every other. If you're a soccer person, there's just too many things going on all at one time. And usually when the Olympics roll around, there's only like 2 or 3 major sports that are active, not all 4 major ones. Oh, and then of course, like the UFC is going down. Like it's going to be impossible to watch all the things that you want to watch, which sucks. It sucks as a sports fan, but also it's like there's going to be a time when we only have one major sport going, and that sucks. Like, that's not the world that we want to live in. We want to live in a world where it's kind of like evenly dispersed throughout the course of the year, instead of this is like now this is like the 4th or 5th sports tsunami that's been going on, and it lasts for like months at a time sometimes, and that's the most annoying part. But all the overlap that's going on. And of course, like if you are a person like me that tries to pay attention to as many sports as they possibly can, as much as they possibly can, even if it's just reading articles or looking at highlights, like this is another massive sporting event because it is a world-class event and it only happens every 4 years. And I see why now. Like, we can't live in a world where me as a sports fan, we can't live in a world where like the Olympics are like every 2 years or every 3 years. It's too much. It really is, especially considering like there are so many people's lives that are connected to that 4-year cycle of the Olympics. So hopefully it looks like it's going to be back from the outside once we're in, and that's by the way, that's why the name of the episode is The Eye of the Storm. So once we're in it, once we're in it, ladies and gentlemen, hopefully it won't be too bad, but hopefully we can watch it and get the best of the best out of all of this situation. But that is my worst of the worst. We move on to about a week ago, which is a segment on this here show where we discuss a story and its development from one week to the next. About a week ago, Novak Djokovic was in Australia. This week, he has been deported. That's the story. So Novak Djokovic, Novak, who is one of the greatest tennis players, not only of our time, but maybe all time when it's all said and done, was on his way, got to Australia to defend his Australian Open, which is out of all the Grand Slams in tennis, he has won the most of. He has won nine Australian Opens. He was trying to go for his 10th one. The Australian government knew he was coming. They knew he was going to show up, and they had already kind of got this plan together about about him attacking the validity of his claims that he previously had COVID, and therefore he doesn't need to be vaccinated because of his antibody development and stuff like that. And if you don't know, Novak also apparently is a legitimate contender to become the president of Serbia at some point because of his greatness as an athlete. Which, by the way, if you pay close enough attention to sports, you know you don't want a professional athlete to become a politician. Like, that's just facts. One, as a professional, if you're a professional athlete, you just take how the dedication and time that it takes for you to be the professional athlete that you are, and then think about wow, people spend their entire lives trying to become high-level politicians, or they spend their entire lives as high-level politicians. I wonder, do they perhaps, do our careers perhaps have some kind of overlap in terms of the dedication and time and skill it takes to develop those abilities? And maybe me trying to become the president of a nation or a congressman or a senator or something like that perhaps is jumping a couple of steps of training that I have not had in line, which legitimately has happened. There was a former Ole Miss quarterback who was running for Congress in Mississippi, and utilized the fact that he played college football as a resume tool, because he talked about leadership and teamwork and camaraderie. And I was like, you know what, dude? I don't think you get it. But maybe you know more than I do. What do I know? I just talking to a microphone, right? But yeah, last week, Novak Djokovic was in Australia. At one point was detained, was free because of a judge who did an overnight overturn of the initial judgment of his vaccination status, or really his immunization status for the Australian Open. They did that 2 more times, and then eventually they were like, no, we win. You got out the first 2 times of minor technicalities that we have now locked up airtight. Get the fuck out. And they kicked him out of Australia. He's been deported. As you can see that photo, he does not look all that happy, mainly because it looks like he's completely surrounded by people. He also may or may not have fibbed about having COVID when he said that he had COVID, because there's photographic and video evidence of him being out and about amongst people when allegedly he was in the time frame of having COVID or being in an infectious state of COVID. But yeah, he's been deported after 3 trials. They finally kicked him out of Australia. So he is now, according to Dan Law Lust on Twitter, who runs a podcast called Conduct Detrimental. Yeah, Conduct Detrimental. It's a sports law podcast. You should definitely check it out. It's very funny. It's very interesting as well. He tweeted about how Novak could potentially be trying to sue the Australian government for defamation. And once again, I'd just like to point out the important thing about this story: all of Novak's problems have a very free solution. Free 99 solution. Anyway, by the way, the bare minimum for making it out of the first round of the Australian Open makes you $24,000. And to win it, you get, I think it's $5 million? $5 million you get if you win the Australian Open. So, you know what? I'm not going to do that whole man, I sure could use $24,000. But I just want to point out, he turned something that was free and was helpful to his overall health and the health of other people around him and turned it into at bare minimum, because Novak Djokovic is like a legit contender for winning the Australian Open again. So you can even argue that he blew $1 million because he didn't want to take a free vaccine. $1 million more, or he blew at least $24,000 because he didn't want to take a vaccine. But hey, some people, some things are more important than money. There you go, baby. Good hustle. We got one more segment here before we take our next hydration break, and then we get to what you're all here for. My elite analysis of the NFL playoffs. So we talking money, or we talking money? It's a segment where we talk. The Tampa Bay Rays had a proposal that a couple years ago, I think a lot of people forgot about this because they kind of got like a hearty har out of it and then moved on with their lives. But the Tampa Bay Rays had a sister city proposal on the table for Major League Baseball. It's like a little tantalizing idea. The general idea is that half of their home schedule would be in Montreal, Canada. You may be asking yourself, why would the Tampa Bay Rays want to go from Florida to Canada, Ashton? So their plan is, so the fact of the matter is that the Tampa Bay Rays, although they have had a lot of success in the last decade, they've made the playoffs like 7 of the last 10 years or something like that. And then they also 2 years ago went to the World Series. They beat the Houston Astros to go to the World Series. They have outperformed finances to player production, outperformed the New York Yankees and Boston Red Sox for the past 5 years, right? They are one of the smallest markets. They are one of the smallest markets in Major League Baseball. They could sell out their stadium and it would still put them in the middle of the pack for MLB attendance, right? Like the Yankees, the Boston Red Sox have all the money of the world behind them for a reason. And the Tampa Bay Rays, of course, a more recent team added to Major League Baseball, doesn't have a super long history or anything like that, is highly effective at getting a lot from very little. They're trying to take what they have as a lot, which of course is their team product, and turn that into a lot of money. They are trying to go back to Montreal. They're trying to have a team in Montreal because if you're a basketball fan, Montreal is essentially the Seattle Supersonics of Major League Baseball. The Montreal Expos are a famous and well-beloved former franchise of Major League Baseball back in the day. They actually used to perform. They used to play in a stadium that was built when Canada hosted the Olympics in Montreal. They used to play in one of the old abandoned stadiums that everybody loves to see those photos of on Twitter and stuff like that, of them abandoned and dilapidated and breaking down and basically returning back to nature. They used to play in one of the stadiums built specifically for the Olympics way back in the day. But nonetheless, the Tampa Bay Rays were trying to make a deal with Major League Baseball to have half their home schedule in Florida and Tampa Bay, and then the other half in Montreal, Canada, a much larger market in terms of baseball, an untapped market in terms of baseball, for them to be able to generate competitive revenue compared to the quality of team that they are putting out there. They essentially have been for the past 5 years. They've been a playoff team for the past 5 years. They've been a title contender the last 3, based off of some excellent farm system work, general managers drafting, and then of course every coach, and then of course amazing players to go along with it. Randy Arozarena, freaking amazing to watch that dude ball. This is now been rejected by Major League Baseball. So there are 2 things that are on the table. Is get a new stadium from a city that doesn't want to give them a new stadium, as every city does it. Every city wants to make the money from the sports teams, but they don't want to pay for it, which is understandable. Everybody's trying to, I have a friend, Snowman, he says it, no free lunch, baby. But anyway, they got that going on. So they got that bad situation going on where they have to go back and have a conversation with a group of people who they've already had a conversation with, and they've given their answer, and now they have to convince them to change their answer. Or they find a city that will give them a new stadium. So there could be a highly successful Major League Baseball team on the market to move somewhere else in this beautiful country of ours, or into Canada. So that's a real thing. And when I say really successful team, I just described, these guys were in the World Series 2 years ago. It's really weird that we're having this conversation about a team that's this competitive. Usually these are the kind of issues that bottom feeder teams kind of have. No offense to people who are fans of bottom feeder teams, but you guys know that like when it rains, it pours for a lot of professional athletes overall, or like a lot of professional sports teams. And this is another example of this would be an example of that happening if the Tampa Bay Rays sucked. Instead, they're one of the best teams in Major League Baseball. So right now, if there was ever a time to move cities, it would be like moving cities for a team that is like a year away from winning a Super Bowl. You can't, like, if I could tell you a couple years ago the Kansas City Chiefs are going to win the Super Bowl, and they had an opportunity the year before they won the Super Bowl, when they were very, very good, the year before they won the Super Bowl, to move to another team or move to another city. That's selling high, baby. That's selling high, and they get a lot of money out of it. So that's what's on the table for the Tampa Bay Rays right now, which will be interesting to see how they kind of shake it out there, because they got to figure something out. Like they got a cash cow on their hands, and they have a city that's not big enough to milk it. I did the numbers, like basic numbers. I didn't go and do like the basic bitch thing where you like took the raw number of people that live in the city and then compared it to the size of the stadium. I know that this number isn't accurate, but if you do that calculation, it will require for their stadium to sell out for 10% of Tampa Bay's metropolitan area. That does not include the suburbs around it, right? The 10% of the people who live in the city of Tampa Bay to go to every single game. And that's 162 games a year for the Tampa Bay Rays to be like sold out, or like have a ton of people in the stadium, which is wild to think about, because 10% of Houston is gigantic. 10% of any other, like 10% of Denver, Colorado is massive. Tampa Bay is one of the small, like we mentioned before, one of the smaller markets, but just thinking about that is like insane. Also, we're in the golden era of Tampa Bay sports. You talk about the Tampa Bay Lightning, who have gone back-to-back on Stanley Cups, right? Combine that with the fact that the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, they got a legit chance to go 2 in 3 years, 2 Super Bowls in 3 years right now, because they're still in it, and they look like they got a pretty favorable matchup. We'll see what happens on Sunday, you know what I mean? But also the Tampa Bay Rays, like, it's kind of like all the money for Tampa Bay sports fans is kind of getting dispersed across the city, right? Like, everybody's crazy competitive right now, and if you really want to put it in the grand scheme, if you want to be basic about it, like, Tampa Bay Rays got to be on the lowest of the totem pole, because everybody else is killing it. They're actually winning the trophies. They're not killing it in the playoffs or the regular season. They're going out there and they're actually bringing home the championship. But yeah, that's the weird world of sports, ladies and gentlemen, where you can be a borderline title contender for like the next 2 years and people still don't take you all that seriously. So yeah, on that note, ladies and gents, we got one thing we need to talk about, and it's your level of hydration. So if you were paying attention right now, if you were here for hydration break number 1, same rules apply. As a matter of fact, I would suggest if you know what, I'm going to maintain it. All types of hydration are equal here in the hydration break for the Broke Boy Sports Podcast. We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we will dive into the NBA. I have one more Major League Baseball story, and then we'll break down the NFL playoffs, and I will be moseying on. We'll be getting you ready for the weekend and sending you on home. Later, guys. Hold on a second. And I say later in terms of hold on a second, let me find the song. Then I tell you later. Let's see. All right. See you in 3 minutes. Yo, we are back here live on the Broke Boys Sports Podcast. I'm Ashton Gene Lewis, and we've entered the final stretch here, ladies and gentlemen. It is the back end of the show. I say back end, but like in actuality, let's be for real. This is the final segment in the sense that if you take a beer, if you take like 6 beers and pour them into one glass and you said that's one beer, that this is the final segment of the show. So we're going to power through here, talk about a bunch of stuff. We got, let's see, sorry. I've been looking at my Google Doc. I've been like kind of talking off the dome for a little bit here. So sign of how good we're feeling. We got NBA stuff to talk about here. We got NFL stuff as well. We do need to talk about some MMA stuff that's going down this weekend, and somebody got promoted in Major League Baseball. We'll talk about them when we get here. But first, we start off by talking about the NBA. Give you a quick, give you your 1 week update of stuff that happened this week. The streaks, ladies and gentlemen, winning and losing streaks alike. The Suns currently have the longest streak in the NBA right now. They've won 5 straight so far, which is pretty impressive. And right behind them, the culture, Miami Heat, have won 2 straight. Yes, it's that kind of weird right now in the league. But losing streaks. An old favorite, ladies and gentlemen, the Detroit Pistons with 3 straight. The Pacers are goddamn menace. Lately, this week, the last 3 games, right? Monday, they lost to the Clippers. That happens. Wednesday, they beat the Lakers in a game where the Lakers ended up benching Russell Westbrook for the last 4 minutes. That was preceded by Russell Westbrook not doing his media availability. According to Russ, Frank Vogel, and the team, it was by the team's request for him to not do media availability about him not playing the last 4 minutes. But he has also doubled down on the fact that he is trying to be the best teammate that he can be, which I don't doubt about Russ most of the time. This game also had reports beforehand that Frank Vogel was coaching for his job, essentially. And then after a key win that happened versus the Golden State Warriors, now Frank Vogel apparently is coaching on a game-by-game basis, which is insane to think about. And you also... it's basically like they say game-by-game basis, very similar to the injuries of players in the NBA. So it's like an injury, but his employment status, and the person updating us on his injury employment status is LeBron James, right? So we got that. As this story develops, we'll be looking to you, LeBron. The Pacers 2 days later also played the Golden State Warriors to an overtime game and won. Without their top 4 scorers, by the way. Like, they didn't have their top 4 scorers due to injury and COVID. And then, I will point this out. The Suns better look out. The Suns are the number 1 team in the West, and the Pacers apparently are on a streak right now. Like I said, a goddamn menace. Even bad teams get hot. Like, one time in the season at some point or another. Yes, the Pacers are one of the worst teams in the league. I think they're currently in 12th place in the East, if I'm not mistaken. Or no, they're in 10th place in the East. Anyway, other stuff going on. Kyrie Irving apparently is winning stuff again, and it's like not on the court. The Nets a couple of months ago, as you recall, were forced to change their team policy about part-time players, which is what Kyrie Irving currently is, who, if you don't know, Kyrie Irving is staunchly against the COVID-19 vaccine for a multitude of reasons that I'm not going to go into. Some people would argue that his reasons are not based in science or logic in some cases, but hey, what do I know? I just talk into a microphone. You should definitely look up why Kyrie Irving doesn't support the COVID-19 vaccine with, he got in the lab, he had the goggles on, he was doing the test, looking at stuff, squeezing things into small vials, put them on the, what's the spinny thing? Whatever. I'll move on with my life. He did that. He came back from the lab and he said, no good. He said, no good. No good for me. But yeah, now we move on to another wrinkle that has developed. Not only have the Nets reversed policy because of a massive COVID outbreak that happened right around the New Year's, just like everybody else, including myself, got COVID. But now Kevin Durant has sprained his MCL, increasing the need for not only just players in general, but also superstar power on the Brooklyn Nets team that is poised to potentially, if there was ever a front runner for winning the NBA championship with what's going on with the Lakers, it is hands down these Brooklyn Nets. So yeah, that being the case, the Kyrie Irving is winning in a very strange way. He's winning based off the suffering of others. Who would have thought? A guy who doesn't want to get vaccinated is winning off the suffering of others. The Bulls, the Chicago Bulls, as a matter of fact, don't know if you guys caught this or not. They're the number one team in the East right now. And sad to say, earlier this week, we found out that could be in jeopardy. Lonzo Ball is getting surgery and is going to be out for, 6 to 8 weeks, I think is the final tally on that whole situation. I am interested to see how this all shakes out for the Bulls in general, because honestly, it really feels like they are flying way too close to the sun. They have been playing lights out, and on top of that, they've been doing it in the old school way. If you are a person who's a fan of the mid-range game, then you are a fan. Oh, wow, my bad. If you're a person who's a fan of the mid-range game, I just changed the scene on YouTube and Twitch. Shout out to everybody who told me that I was still in the hydration break slide. But yeah, if you're a person who's a fan of the mid-range game, the Chicago Bulls are now your favorite team in the NBA. So congratulations to you. You found your one true love in basketball, and they've been killing it, man. It's a new season where they're calling fouls kind of old school in the manner of like you're not going to get rewarded for throwing yourself into people and taking fouls, and the mid-range game is back. And centers are more important. After last season, centers are more valuable than ever. What a time to be alive. Life is a flat circle. Time is a flat circle. Anyway, other stuff going on in the league. The Cleveland Cavaliers, who are the current 6th seed in the East right now, they have the Rookie of the Year on their roster. His name is Evan Mobley. He's running away with it, ladies and gents. The Charlotte Hornets are on the verge of having LaMelo Ball get his first All-Star bid, which is going to be pretty dope. There are 2 NBA teams that are basically falling apart, and it actually kind of breaks my heart. One team, they're not kind of falling apart. They are completely falling apart. It is the Portland Trailblazers. They've had multiple injuries at this point during the season to key players. Damian Lillard's going to be out for a while, and CJ McCollum missed a good chunk of the early part of the season. If you didn't hear, first of all, you should go listen and subscribe to the Pull Up Podcast. CJ McCollum is the best currently in the game player that is active, that is going to become a media member at some point. Hopefully somebody's going to throw a bunch of money at him. I feel like he could be a game changer for any network, so hopefully ESPN can give him the money he needs, because honestly, that whatever network he ends up working for, I'm going to watch that network. He is astounding on his podcast and how well-versed, not well-versed just in basketball in general, but like global basketball. Like he knows a bunch of EuroLeague players. His brother plays professionally in the EuroLeague. And then on top of that, he loves him some wine. And he doesn't just talk about like different names and kind of gives you like basic information. He goes like way too deep, and I appreciate that. He's passionate about it. And a lot of people who are big fans of wine, I feel like we're kind of brothers in the sense that I like cigars a lot. Siblings from my days out there. Anyway, the Portland Trailblazers completely off the wagon, falling apart. The other teams that are really sadly falling apart here, they are currently in 11th and 12th place in the East. The 11th place team is the New York Knicks, who are bottom 3 in scoring and just straight up shooting attempts so far this season. So they're like missing a bunch of shots, and they're taking fewer shots than most teams that they're playing up against. Facts are they kind of were in the same place offensively last year. They were just a little bit more effective, and that percentage point makes a big difference. They were not only shooting more shots, but they were also making more shots on average. They are just one of the worst offensive teams in the NBA right now. They are 6th in defense this season, and that's why it's so strange to see such a dominant defensive team really struggle to go out there and consistently get wins. And maybe they're just a couple of shooters away. Maybe they're just a couple of made shots from here and there from becoming, a top 5 team in the East. And I think that's a legitimate point to be made, especially considering last year they had people who were playing above what their typical expectation is. And so to come into this year and see some guys kind of quote unquote regress, like they're not really regressing, right? Like they're guys who played hot for a long period of time. Like we saw the situation earlier this season with Kemba Walker getting benched and then having to come back because of COVID, and then showing that he's capable of being an offensive leader out there if you give him a chance to do it. So that combined with like the fact that Julius Randle's been injured, other stuff that goes into it. The Knicks have been and made a trade. They were one of the first teams. I think they were the first team or one of the first teams to make an official trade before the trade deadline went down, and they kind of picked up some help, but like on the reality of the situation is not like game-changing, shot-making, seismic type stuff that's going to go along with it. So if they're going to be a playoff team, they got to figure out how to knock down more threes, which not even threes actually, because their 3-point percentage is pretty good. Like, they're above average in terms of 3-point percentage overall and 3-pointers made, but it's just all the other buckets. Like, turns out the 2-pointers matter too. Who would have thought? The other team that is falling apart is currently in 12th place. That is the Atlanta Hawks, who, guess what, basically have the exact opposite problem of the Knicks. They are too heavily dependent upon Trae Young offensively, and Trae Young and John Collins, who allegedly had like trade rumors swirling around him, which I'm sure is great for the guy who you know is your staunch number 2 in the league or whatever. But the Hawks, who were coming off of a pretty impressive showing in the playoffs last year, beating the Knicks and then going toe-to-toe with the 76ers, right? So they got that going for them, and they've come back out and they look like the team 2 years ago. Yeah, they look like the Hawks of 2 years ago, and it's terrible defense. They are one of the worst defensive teams in the league, and they also give up fifth most free throws in the league right now. So they're giving up a lot of free points, and they're not defending all that well. And they're also heavily dependent upon one player to absolutely dominate the game. And that's your 1 week update for the NBA. Sorry to end it on such a negative Nancy type situation, but we do have other things to be positive about. We got a heavyweight championship fight this weekend in the UFC. Francis Ngannou, who, if you don't know his story, you should definitely look it up. Guys from Morocco immigrated to France, very similar to Giannis Antetokounmpo in the sense that he, from an African nation, immigrated to a European country, was living on the streets, essentially, picked up his sport relatively late in life to other people and showed a great aptitude for it and great desire, saw that it could be a pathway for him to reach heights that he didn't think were possible. And Francis Ngannou, I think at the age of like 25, had his first professional fight. And that's super late into the game when it comes to MMA. Started training when he was at 25, right? So he's fighting his former sparring partner, Cyril Gane, who is also technically got half of the heavyweight championship, and Francis has the other half. This is a unification bout, and Cyril Gane is 10-0 against heavyweights in the UFC, which is insane to think about because there are some heavy hitters in the heavyweight division for the UFC. But on top of that, having a 10-fight win streak in general in MMA is so difficult to obtain, especially in the UFC, where it is literally the best of the best. His last bout was against Derek Lewis to take the ununified heavyweight championship. Derek Lewis, straight out of H-Town, one of the deadliest heavyweights out there in the world, technically, when you think about it in the grand scheme of things. And Cyril Gane went out there and did his thing. Now he's fighting against arguably one of the best heavyweights to do it in our time right now, and I can't wait to see what he's able to put together, man. This is going to be an exciting fight. Also, Brandon Moreno is fighting this weekend. Yeah, Brandon Raw Dog Moreno. Shout out to him. MLB stuff. Well, we mentioned somebody got a promotion. The promotion was for the robot umpires in Major League Baseball. Last season, there was not minor league baseball. If you've been paying attention to this story, the robotic umps to call balls and strikes have been utilized at the minor league level alongside regular umpires, and now they got a promotion from single A ball to triple A ball, which is a huge jump in terms of how it all shakes out, right? But yeah, the robot umpires one step closer to premiering in Major League Baseball. I'm sure that all the umpires across the world are super pumped about that, especially if you're a person who, and you can talk about how you don't believe that this exists, but there are people who aspire to be the peak of their profession. And if you're an umpire, peak of your profession is in Major League Baseball, calling the World Series. So robotic umps being this successful and making their way up and potentially cutting out a lot of cost for Major League Baseball, not great. But only time will tell. I'm sure it'll be a ton of conversations across FS1 and ESPN and NBC Sports and every other media market, and there will be so many more think pieces written long before robotic umps ever get into Major League Baseball and make that happen. By the way, just a quick update on the current status of Major League Baseball's lockout. Yes, the players are still locked out. They allegedly were trying to start spring training in February, and that didn't work out for them. So that being said, I find that pretty interesting that they're in this situation where they are, looks like they could be starting the season with a strike. So that's going to be, they're inching closer. They have a meeting on Monday, and if the meeting doesn't go well, which it may or may not, there's a very legit chance that it goes horribly wrong, and they continue to stay within the lockout that we're currently in, because the gap between them is so massive. So it really is going to come down to, like it always does, trying to starve out the players who need money to be able to survive. And when you are an organization that has made damn sure that everybody other than certain Major League Baseball players are basically living below minimum wage, I'm saying there are minor league baseball players who get paid nothing, who not only want an opportunity to continue to play baseball, but on top of that, don't have the money to just to sit around and wait for the union to work out this situation, where there are people in Major League Baseball who make a lot of money because they're in the majors, but then they're the guys who are like in the upper echelon who have already made it past like arbitration and league control time and all that kind of stuff like that. They got their first big contract in real free agency, which is something that Major League Baseball tries to prevent from happening as much as possible in their sport for a specific reason, and it is to prevent a massive amount of money from going to a ton of players because they do not have a salary cap. So with that being said, Major League Baseball and the MLBPA, hopefully they figure it out on Monday, because they're running out of weeks to have Monday meetings where I look at Jeff Passan tweet about how, oh man, the league and the union had a 30-minute meeting. Everybody left and they did not seem happy. So there's only so many times that I can laugh at that tweet before you start to be like, yep, they're probably going to start the season not actually playing baseball. Congratulations to them. Other stuff going on, and actually not other stuff. It's time, ladies and gentlemen. Let's talk about some football. Let's talk about some football, shall we? Moving right along. If you guys don't know, there's football this weekend. So there's games on Saturday. There is Saturday football. Put that on your schedule. Saturday and Sunday. Saturday at 4:30 p.m., which is 3:30 p.m. Central, 4:30 p.m. Eastern. By the way, the games are also, if you have Paramount Plus, apparently they put in the games on Paramount Plus. I don't know if they have that thing where like you have to have a cable provider and then type their information in on Paramount Plus for you to be able to watch the game. But, we're moving one step closer to where we really need to be in sports, where you can watch it on an app, on a phone, without having a cable package. And that's I believe to be paramount to making sports more accessible to everyone. Other stuff going on. Like I said, there's actually a game going on in this time slot. So the Bengals are taking on the Titans. The Titans are the 1 seed that got the 1 week break. They were one of 2 teams, along with the Packers, who got a 1 week bye in the playoffs. The Tennessee Titans are facing off against the Cincinnati Bengals, who are in the second round of the playoffs for the first time in 31 years, almost as long as I've been alive. So that is an interesting place for them to be, especially considering the kind of team that they have, which is a bunch of upstart young guns. Like Zach Taylor is allegedly not supposed to be in this position. If you guys recall, Zach Taylor's the guy who got his job, and then everybody was like, "Oh wow, they just giving out jobs to people who just like know Sean McVay." Legitimately, that's what people said, and now his team's in the playoffs. They are going up against the Tennessee Titans, who are, honestly, if you want to talk about flipping the script from one year to the next, the amount of defensive presence that they have developed in just a singular year has been very impressive. They are one of the best teams in terms of getting pressure this season. They have, like I've mentioned before on the show, they basically increased their pressure output, and I think they increased their pressure output by more than like 40% in comparison to last season. Last season was really bad in terms of like getting pressure on people, but now they've done it consistently. They're getting people and making stuff happen up front. They're getting the quarterbacks. They're getting sacks, which of course puts pressure on those quarterbacks to make pinpoint perfect passes. You have to wonder how well the Tennessee Titans secondary, which has been doing pretty well, like they've generated a good chunk of turnovers this season as well. They've been doing pretty well, but they've also had heavy amounts of injuries that have hampered them from being all together in cohesion. Because remember, the Tennessee Titans are the number 1 seed in the playoffs for the AFC, but they are also the most injured team in NFL history. Don't forget that part. But the other stuff that goes along with it is that the Bengals have one of the best wide receiver cores in the NFL, like just between Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. CJ Uzomah has clearly had CJ Uzomah's having the best year of his entire, like his best career year in the NFL, and Tyler Boyd's been cooking it up as well. Joe Mixon's a really good receiving running back, along with actually just being a running back, and the pass protection for the Bengals has had a lot of moments where it's looked really, really good. The Bengals are going to be without two of their defensive tackles. They lost Ojulari to I think it's like a knee injury that happened last week, like really early on. And he's one of their best run stoppers. They will have Trey Hendrickson back. If you're not familiar with Trey Hendrickson, used to be a part of the New Orleans Saints, actually led the league in sacks one year. And then PFF podcast basically went out and they were like, oh, his sacks are just all hustle sacks. He actually is not good as a defensive end. And then here we are. He's one of the best defensive linemen in the NFL again. So, yeah, Trey Hendrickson is a pinpointing perfect example of why PFF isn't the end-all be-all, but they're still very good at their job. And it's very funny to me that I distinctly remember them like going out of their way. Not very often do you hear them like kind of the way that they talked about him in such a negative tone. It's like I haven't heard it like that all that often. And that happened, and it happened like they had to stop themselves from continuing to talk shit about Trey Hendrickson. I found that interesting. But yeah, nonetheless, ladies and gents, that is that's a big factor. He's a big pass rusher for them, and he's going to be very helpful because if you guys don't know, Ryan Tannehill, one of the Bill, haven't seen a lot of crazy stuff that you see from like Lamar Jackson from him or anything like that. But I mean, Ryan Tannehill can move. He can move, baby. He can scoot, as they like to say. Other stuff that goes along with this game. Maybe we should talk about the big elephant in the room. And when I say the big elephant, I mean former Alabama running back Derrick Henry is back for the first time in 8 weeks. 8 weeks in this one. So it's going to come down to, once again, like it did last week versus the Raiders, whether or not they are going to be effective. Man, how do I phrase this? The Bengals defense did a decent job last week. The offense kind of fizzled out towards the back end of that game. But the fact of the matter is, there's a lot of moments that the Raiders put themselves in a bad position versus the Bengals, and the Bengals were able to capitalize on it sometime. Versus the Titans, they're going to need to be able to be consistent up front in terms of their run game, and they're going to be in a situation where, luckily for them, they have Chidozie Awuzie, who's been killing it for them at the corner position, and they have Jesse Bates. And like I said last week, it's very funny. I was like, or said earlier this week, Jesse Bates is the new Kevin Byard, and I made that joke because a lot of people didn't really respect the fact that Kevin Byard, like how much of a dynamic playmaker he was at the safety position he was. A lot of people pointed out how Kevin Byard is so good that when you play single high with him, it's just as good as like prime Earl Thomas, essentially. But yeah, Jesse Bates all over the place if you watch that game versus the Raiders, who, you know, have a decent offense. Well, not really. They had one of the weakest offensive lines coming into in the regular season and in the playoffs. But Jesse Bates was able to take advantage of like the secondary play. They didn't have great wide receivers up front. The Tennessee Titans have two ridiculously high-level wide receivers. They have A.J. Brown and, of course, Julio Jones to go on. A.J. Brown has been outstanding. Julio Jones has been injured most of this season. So it'll be interesting to see how he plays in a playoff game overall, because it's been, I think, 3 years since he made the playoffs. But nonetheless, This one is an interesting matchup because all the things point to the Tennessee Titans should be very, very successful against this team, especially considering that Derrick Henry is now back. But my biggest thing that I take away from it is what I saw in the second half of the Bengals, where when their defensive line was like depleted up front, right? Like they got so banged up. By the way, there's been multiple times this season where the Tennessee Titans offensive line has just been like they have sucked ass, and they will attest to that. They have just fallen apart. They've been a shell of the high quality team that we saw them be before. But there's now a situation where, how do I phrase this properly? The Bengals, the first half was dominated by the defensive line, and then the second half of their game versus the Raiders was dominated by the secondary. And I'm interested to see, can the secondary show up for the entirety of the game? Like they showed up the entirety of the Raiders game or whatever, but they dominated the second half of that game in terms of presence defensively. And I'm interested to see how that really breaks out, man. And then, of course, the big question starts to become Joe Burrow at the quarterback position. He played basically a perfect game versus the Raiders in a lot of situations, but he also is the NFL leader in interceptions for a reason. And if the Tennessee Titans get the pressure that they've been getting throughout the course of the regular season against Joe Burrow, you have to wonder what's going to happen. And honestly, if there was ever a game that is wrought with the most potential for an upset, it is this one, because the Tennessee Titans are considered to be one of the weakest number one seeds that we've seen in a long time because of the AFC South, the division that they're in. They played two teams 4 times that are picking in the top 3 of the NFL draft. And then they played a team that didn't even make the playoffs because they couldn't beat one of those 2 teams that is picking top 3 in the draft. So it makes you wonder, but they've had a lot of key moments throughout the course of this season. They had a rough start of it versus Seattle, but they've also had a lot of huge moments in terms of teams that they've been able to beat successfully. The Bengals have also had a lot of those moments in terms of like how they played the Kansas City Chiefs. Man, and this is one of the few games that I did not have an answer written down immediately in terms of who I'm picking. And honestly, I'm still kind of mulling it over because all the answers seem to point to the Titans winning this one. But there's something that I've seen about the Bengals that makes me think that they can make something happen. And I think it comes down to the fact that Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase probably have the best connection in the NFL. But I worry about Kevin Byard and his ability to generate turnovers. And then, of course, a hurt Bengals defense up front is not going to bode well unless they're going to get some amazing play from the defensive line, which with Trey Hendrickson and Sam Hubbard, that is a legitimate possibility for that to happen. And, of course, they've had some decent linebacker play throughout the course of this game. For the sake of drama, I will be taking the Bengals. I like me an upset. I'll take the Bengals on this one, despite the fact that everything says that the Tennessee Titans should be able to win this one, especially considering they might have the best run game. But we only saw one version of the Bengals versus the Raiders. There's another version that is a run-centric team that was very successful throughout the course of the season at multiple moments that got them into it. So I'll be interested to see what Joe Mixon does in this one. Only time will tell, but I'll take the Bengals on that one. The 49ers are taking on the Packers. If you don't know, Aaron Rodgers has this weird thing where he can never beat the 49ers. They actually have one win all time versus the 49ers. And it was earlier this season, 30-28 in the regular season. And that was that weird game where it was like, was it raining? Yeah, it was like raining in California, which is like a weird thing that that made that situation a little bit stranger than it normally is. But everybody's supposedly supposed to be healthy. Like Joey Bosa's coming back from the concussion, and he's going to play in this game. And then Green Bay is supposed to be getting back Zadarius Smith, which is what makes me lean their way because their defense is already absurd to begin with. And they don't depend heavily upon turnovers, right? They generate turnovers, but the fact of the matter is the Packers just play flat out amazing defense up front with like Preston Smith and Zadarius Smith and a bunch of other linebackers as well, Whitney Merciless. And then, of course, they do have a lockdown corner. Yeah, so I'll be taking the Packers in this one, man. I know I got burned by the 49ers in the last round when they played against the Cowboys, but this is two of the best defenses in the NFL going up against each other. And then, of course, that means it comes down to the effectiveness of the offense. And you've seen the Packers, ladies and gentlemen. They have 2 running backs that they can depend upon and get yards for them. They have multiple they don't have Marquez Valdez-Scantling, but they will have Randall Cobb, a person who has a really good connection with Aaron Rodgers. And then, of course, it comes down to whether or not you can stop Devontae Adams. And usually the answer on the test is no, you can't. So I'm banking on that. This will be interesting. This game will probably be way closer than it actually should be. And that's the end of the Saturday games. Sunday, what the hell's going on here? Sunday, I had the wrong thing written on my sheet. Sunday, 2:05 p.m., the Rams will take on the Buccaneers. That's an NBC game, which will be interesting to see during the daytime. This is a regular season rematch. The Rams won the first time that they played each other, 34-24. The big injuries in this game are actually, I think, very important, more so for the Rams side than they are for the Buccaneers. So Ronald Jones is not playing, which means Leonard Fournette and Keyshawn Vaughn are probably going to be the top 2 guys that they depend upon. Rashad Perriman, if you don't know who that is, he's one of the many wide receivers for the Buccaneers who has been hurt this season. He's actually hurt this year. He's hurt for this game. He will not be playing. There is no word yet on whether Tristan Wirfs, their left tackle, will be playing. Tristan Wirfs out of Iowa, who has been a simple plug-and-play left tackle. Kind of astounding how well he's kind of blended in there with the offensive line for the Buccaneers, which has been top-notch since Tom Brady got there. But combine that with the fact that the Rams will be without their safety, Taylor Rapp, who's been one of their best guys in terms of coverage this season. He's the guy that Jalen Ramsey tried to punch in the face. So they also, this is, by the way, Taylor Rapp being hurt is why they got Eric Weddle out of retirement. So Eric Weddle is probably going to be playing a couple of snaps. He played a few snaps versus the He played a few snaps in the last game versus the Cardinals. He may be playing a lot more in this game. They had with Taylor hurt. And then their other safety is also hurt as well. So Eric Weddle's probably going to be playing a lot in this one, which, Tom Brady totally won't take advantage of or anything. Big injury, though, that has got me really concerned about the effectiveness of the offense for the Rams. Andrew Whitworth, who is basically a miracle of science. He plays left tackle. He is also 40 years old. Those two things are apparently not influencing each other. Him being 40 years old with 40-year-old joints, and then him also playing one of the most difficult positions based upon speed, leverage, and power in the NFL. Don't know. Old man, dad strength. I don't know what the deal is with Andrew Whitworth. One of the greatest to ever do it. Hall of Famer. No question about it whatsoever. That's a huge problem because the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, I don't know if you guys have heard this or not, they're really good at playing defense. They're, as a matter of fact, they're the number one pressure creating team in the NFL. And then on top of that, they are also the number one run defense in the NFL. So, yeah. You can see how that could be a problem, right? Like a team like the Rams, which we'll talk about it. Strangely enough, both left tackles for both teams could potentially not play in this game, and it could open up a bad situation. But these are two of the best defenses. You could argue like these are two top 5 defenses without question in the NFL. And then there's a top 5 offense, and then a top 10 offense on any given day. The consistency is the problem, right? Like that's what is the biggest issue. This game is going to feature two of the best quarterbacks in the NFL. Matthew Stafford and Tom Brady are number 1 and number 2 in terms of touchdowns thrown this season. And then they are both also top 5 in game-winning drives overall in their careers. And Tom Brady's been playing longer than Matthew Stafford. So Matthew Stafford, of course, has had fewer opportunities than Tom. He's also 10 game-winning drives behind him when it's all said and done. But yeah, Tom Brady, Matthew Stafford. You can talk about how Matthew went off the rails in terms of throwing the interceptions in the back half of the season and all that kind of stuff like that. You can try and make jokes about how, he's the least pressured number 1 pick overall in the NFL, in the history of the NFL draft, but he's got a lot of clutch moments when you look at the numbers. And if you've ever watched him consistently when he played for the Lions, you know that that's like a legitimate thing that he's done on a regular basis. So it makes me wonder if that could play a factor into this one, because this is one of the few times where Tom Brady's playing a guy who could be potentially on his level at his peak, throw for throw, right? There's a lot of dudes that, like, even at their very best, they wouldn't be able to hang with Tom Brady. But anyway, we move on. We talk about the breakdown of this whole situation. We can talk about the offense all we want, but when it's said and done, we can talk about the quarterbacks all we want, but when it's all said and done, if you watch the Rams consistently, there are 2 names that are going to basically decide whether or not that this game goes their way or not, right? Like, of course, one of them is like, no. We can talk about Matthew Stafford. He's going to be a huge factor in this. We can talk about Van Jefferson, Odell Beckham Jr., but the 2 names that I'm thinking of are Cam Akers and Sony Michel. They're the 2 running backs for the LA Rams. They are going to be the paramount difference maker in this game, because if they cannot do their jobs, it puts the ball in Matthew Stafford's hands more. And if Matthew Stafford has to go out there and try and make the entirety of the offense for the Rams work, bad things happen because it increases the chances of a turnover. And this is like the weirdest stat about the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. They have 4 losses this season. They lost to the Saints twice. One of those games they got shut out. They lost to the Washington football team, and they lost to the LA Rams earlier in the regular season. In 3 of those 4 instances, those teams had 0 turnovers. The only team that was able to have a turnover and beat the Tampa Bay Buccaneers was the Washington football team. Literally every team that has turned the ball over versus the Bucs this year has lost to them, except the Washington football team. It's the difference maker. It is pivotal because of how good their defense is up front in terms of generating pressure, in terms of taking away one aspect of the game. And then, of course, now the secondary is getting healthier and healthier by the week. You saw, Mike Edwards has been pretty consistent in picking off the ball throughout the course of the season. It's going to take the whole team to go out here and make sure they keep arguably the best defense in the NFL honest up front. They cannot become one-dimensional and win this game, no matter how talented they are, and they are immensely talented at a lot of places on offense. And I can't wait to see what it looks like from the defensive side of the ball. A lot of people have been questioning like whether or not Jalen Ramsey is going to follow with Mike Evans. That's going to be interesting. Of course, without Taylor Rapp, now somebody who's not been playing the entirety of the season for the Rams is now stepping into a pivotal position that could be the difference between giant, big time touchdown plays down the field. And we all know Mike Evans loves to catch him some long bombs from Tom Brady, right? But yeah, that's something to take into factor in this one, man. And quite frankly, as much as I think the Rams could win the Super Bowl, I think the Rams legitimately are a Super Bowl contender in this one. I feel like I gotta go with the better defense, and that's the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Yeah, I feel weird about picking the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, mainly because I usually don't do that for some reason. But yeah, I got to go with the better defense, and I feel like it's the Buccaneers, especially considering the injury situation that's going on. And of course, the battle up front is going to be pivotal. I love me an upset, but man, it looks like it's going to be a huge uphill battle because as soon as they turn the ball over one time, it makes me think like the line of success, the margin for success is like razor thin because a turnover is just like one play away, right? But man, there's something, I don't know, man. It makes me, and of course, we're at the playoffs now. Like some of the best teams, they're the two best teams, right? And ironically enough, the biggest game of the weekend, I have like it seems so easy in my mind. It's not even a question of who's going to win it. But yeah, I guess we'll ride with the Buccaneers, man. I don't feel very good about it. You know what, man? I'm gonna go with the Rams. I take it back. Very similar to my suggestion about the Titans being better in a lot of areas, a lot of key areas than the Bengals, and still picking the Bengals. I'm picking the Rams to pull the upset over the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, man. I'm going with it. I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna fall into the trap. I'm ready for this one mentally. We're gonna do it. We're going with the Rams. I changed my mind. Other stuff going on. This is the last game on the schedule. This is also a rematch of the regular season. This is Sunday Night Football. It's on CBS and it's on Paramount, but it's a 5:30 start on this one. So the Chiefs did win the last time these two faced off against each other, 38-20. And the Bills won 38-20 in this one. That was Week 5. There's a situation going on right now with Willie Gay, who, if you don't know him, he's a linebacker for the Kansas City Chiefs. He got caught up on like a domestic violence charge. Apparently, he went to go visit his 3-month-old son, and then something happened where multiple things in this woman's house was broken, and including the wall was damaged in some way, shape, or form. She called the cops. Willie Gay was taken into custody, and apparently he will play on Sunday, which will be interesting. And I hope that young lady is okay, and I hope that child is okay as well. Anyway, moving on. The unit that is under the most pressure, without question, in this game is hands down the Kansas City Chiefs defense. And that's why this game seems so easy to me. In my mind, I cannot see the Bills losing this game, which of course means they're probably going to lose it. But in my mind, the defensive presence that the Bills have is ridiculous. The Kansas City Chiefs, even at their absolute best, does not compete with the Bills' defense. And we can sit here and talk about how clutch Patrick Mahomes is and how dangerous and how amazing his improvisation is. But one thing that's for sure, if the Bills have their improvisation on the table in terms of their ability to extend plays, their ability to get wide receivers in weird spots for Josh Allen to make dime throws. And I'm not expecting what I saw last week versus the Patriots, right? Like, that's absurd. What I'm expecting more of is when and if the Chiefs are able to get consistent pressure, that Josh Allen is able to come up and make throws at Stephon Diggs, who's moving out in space against the zone that the Chiefs like to play so much. And I think that's the big difference maker. Both of these teams have improvisation in their pocket. The Chiefs more so than the Bills, because the Chiefs are far more consistent in terms of their improvisation. And then, of course, the question starts to become, do they fall into the same trap that had them looking so porous at the beginning of the season, where they're only trying to look for deep passes down the field, right? And if they fall into that situation, I think that will spell absolute doom for them when it's all said and done. But with the Bills, if their improvisation is on the table, plus the elite level play that they get from their defense up front, and I'm not talking about from like the secondary. The secondary helps generate the sacks and the pressure that the Bills have gotten this season, right? That's a big deal. That's a big thing to go along with this. And then, of course, like the Chiefs' run game has been a little sketchy. Apparently, Clyde Edwards-Helaire is on the table for playing in this game. We'll see what happens when it comes game time. But I feel very confident saying that the Bills are going to win this one. I'll take it. I really will. I don't even feel like there's no question about it whatsoever in my mind. There's no like wishy-washy back and forth. It is legitimately like the Bills are going to win this game. That's it. And on that note, ladies and gentlemen, that is all I got in terms of podcasts for you. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for checking out the show. Make sure you check out, like I said before, the Pull Up Podcast, which is CJ McCollum's podcast. Hit me up on Twitter, FB_playbook at the Ashton J, or if you want to follow the podcast on Twitter at BrokeBoyPod. Like and subscribe, smash that notification bell so you know when we go live. Also check back regularly for new content. I'm supposed to be uploading an exit interview with Joe George from Sports Talk Radio 790, talking about the Chicago Bears and the Houston Texans, about their regular season expectation in comparison to what they want to do in the offseason, and kind of wrapping up their season overall. And we're going to keep making more of those. I'm trying to get to all 32 teams. That's my goal. That's my end goal when it's all said and done. It is a playlist on YouTube, so check that out if you want to check out my conversation with Karen Garegian. And on that note, wash your hands, wash your ass. Really, stay away from people. I'm just kidding. Wash your hand, wash your ass. Be safe about it, guys. Omicron's out here in these streets, and it's not making you dance. I can tell you that. I just found out that a person that I know is in the hospital with COVID and about to be intubated today, I believe, is when the Facebook post was posted. So that's a little rough. Make sure you're being smart. It's still out here. It's still very real. Wash your hands, wash your ass. Go home, Roger.